everyone, and welcome back, footy fans. It's another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here. I don't know why I keep messing that up when I do my podcast, but please forgive me, ladies and gentlemen. I filmed this one shot go. So, your host of the episode, Coach Donnie Hess here, and we have another episode of the SANFL Snapshot. Joining me from a little bit nippy Adelaide, South Australia, Mr. Phil Aspinall and Darcy Evans. First, we'll start. Darce, how are you doing, sir? Is the poster that fell down while we were getting ready
It
okay?
was. I thought I had everything ready to go. I will just hold it up because it's a pretty special one of mine. I was going to have that up here, the premiership from a few years ago, but I had it up
Awesome.
here, guys. But no, down to it. Donnie, I'm so looking forward to today. It's just like someone's gone to sleep and wake up. It's gone a full 360 what's gone out there in the world today in SANFL footy. And Phil, we're trying to talk about a certain win that happened a few weeks ago. He was very quiet on Facebook, I thought, but he's just come back with a vengeance, and you can see his background at the moment. And I'm sure he's going to talk about that shortly. So looking forward to the podcast, mate.
All right. For those that are watching the YouTube and that know the beautiful background of the Central District Bulldogs women's team have won the premiership. Phil, how up and about are you? I know we went back and forth a little bit on the night. How excited are you? Magnificent background, I must say.
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening, Donnie, and yeah, Das, great to be with you. And yeah, still on a high, mate. First time in a long time that I went to the game as just a spectator. Obviously, when I'm commentating, don't have any bias and just wear the neutral hat. But the SANFL stream the games on Channel 7 wasn't needed for commentating, and it was just great to take my wife and son. My son helped hold the banner out, which replicated what I did as a kid in 1995 for holding the banner for the men's first grand final. So to replicate that, it was a really special family day, and yeah, something still pretty special as well, hanging on to.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. We will discuss how all that happened just in a little bit, but we'll start with the men's competition just because we're still in the thick of everything. We've hit kind of a little bit of a fun part of the season that I had to actually ask before we hopped on mic. So we'll jump into it. We will cover rounds 7 through 10 as far as we have played in the SANFL and recap the scintillating, absolutely magnificent women's finals and discuss that a little bit. So let's jump right into it, gentlemen. I know we'll go back a few weeks. Round 7 for the men's. We'll start off there. We'll go through each of the rounds. And starting off the round, saw the Adelaide Crows reserves knock off Norwood 60-36. Your Woodville West Torrens, Darcy, your Woodville West Torrens Eagles get a nice little win over Westies 94-38. The Central Districts Bulldogs fall to Glenelg 53-44. The Roosters with a nice win over the Maggies 192 and start continuing their winning ways with a 2-point thriller over the South Panthers. So really quickly, I know just by score, I would say that there's a couple of crackers here with Glenelg beating Centrals and Sturt beating South. So Phil, really quickly, game of the round and kind of why.
Yeah, look, for mine, it ended up being the South Adelaide Sturt game. I think South Adelaide wasted their chances, and Sturt, we know that they're obviously a great team, started the season 7-0, but good sides know how to win ugly, and South Adelaide controlled this game for the majority of it. It was the Channel 7 broadcast, and in the end, Sturt, won ugly, and good sides do that rather. And Marty Mattner, the coach, said that. And the other game, I think, was a bit of a testament for where the Dogs' improvement has been. Obviously, Glenelg now ladder leaders, and that was a bit of a dour struggle in some wet weather. And Central were competitive, but the Tigers were too strong.
And Darcy, your game of the round that you thought.
Oh, look, I think, as Phil said about Sturt South, you look at Sturt, we said, will they go the season undefeated? And they could have lost to the second bottom side. So that was actually an incredible effort by South Adelaide. No doubt about that. Losing to a bottom side, it sort of where does Sturt sit now? But they did come out with a win, and we'll probably talk a bit about Sturt in a minute, especially to that loss a couple of weeks ago. But the other one, look, my Eagles, yet they needed that big win. I think they just need to put some fire in the legs, and it's good they did come out with that. And that's just, it's funny how they're in the 4 now, but only by percentage because it's so close. This, and if they just lost a couple of other games, they could be sitting second bottom, but only 2 games out of the 5. So this is how close this is. But Nord, look, they lost this one, but I think we'll see some things happening in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. We'll definitely go to it because one of those things that I've been keeping an eye on for sure. So we moved to round 8, and again, another nail biter for Centrals, just barely knocking off the legs, 56-51. Glenelg just edging the Crows reserves 82-80. South beating North 78-51. Port Adelaide Maggies fall to the Eagles 62-59, and Sturt edging off Westies 63-59. I mean, there's not a bad game in this particular round unless you count the kind of drubbing a little bit by 27 by South over North. So Dars, really quickly, I mean, I know your Eagles getting a win over the Maggies that's pretty impressive win there.
That was a great win by the Maggies. It was at Albert Oval too, and I know people, they hate playing Port at Albert because that's where they had the bigger crowds. I think they had about 4,500 there that day. It was a huge crowd by having Port there, and obviously Eagles supporters. But it's really the Sturt again. I thought, they're playing a bottom side. They're only winning by the 4 points. They're an undefeated side. Come and playing these bottom sides, only just scraping in over the line at the end. So I think that was my round, saying, gee whiz, Westies could have pulled off a big upset of the day. Mm-hmm. And again, you look at Glenelg, that would have been the match of the day watching it, because obviously the two top sides, or Glenelg second and Adelaide third, I believe. So, to win by 2 points, that would have been a ball terror to watch as well.
All right, Phil, what about you? Is that Central's North game one of your favorites, or is another one catch your eye?
Well, I was there commentating it with Jack Hanneth, the former Bulldogs player and Fremantle AFL ruckman, and it was a tight game, and the Dogs did well to hang on. I think what we saw is the gradual improvement of Norwood continue, and a bit like the comment about good sides win ugly. Centrals are an improved side, and it wasn't the prettiest of wins, but they got the points. But Darce alluded to it. I think the game of the round was definitely the Glenelg Crows game, and I watched that on replay. Matty Allen from the Tigers was the star with minutes remaining, kicked a long goal from outside 50, and Adelaide probably should have won that game, played the better footy from what I could see. And I think the one other key thing to come out of the round was the big turnaround in form for South Adelaide, but more so to the point, the drop-off from the Roosters. They've been very Jekyll and Hyde this year. If not for a Matthew Panos snap-on goal in the dying minutes in last year's grand final, they'd be reigning premiers. And they're really struggling at the moment, and that was probably the start of their poor form in that loss to South Adelaide.
Definitely, for sure. We jump to round 9. And starts off, Adelaide reserves knock off Woodville West Torrens 95-72. Westies beat North 68-39. The Maggies edge off Centrals 92-69. Glenelg smash the undefeated Sturt at the time 150-45. And do my eyes deceive me, ladies and gentlemen? Norwood get their first win finally. 79-56. I mean, I know normally we go game of the round, but I think the one I really want to talk about has to be this Glenelg absolute dismantling of Sturt. This came out of nowhere. I know Sturt had a couple of games, as you had said, Dars, a couple of games against lower-sided teams that they just edge, but I was not expecting an absolute hiding by 105. Wow.
I was with you. I was at the Eagles game that day, and I was, you sort of go into the app and check the scores. I had to tap it a couple of times to make sure what I was seeing was correct. Even the South Norwood game, I thought, gee, Norwood have got to understand South is second bottom, but it doesn't matter that they haven't really won a game. They haven't, they're losing games by quite good margins, but come out and win, and then that for 105 points, that's just incredible. That's just what shows maybe what Glenelg, the might they have, and Sturt. We said they'll lose one. They need to lose one game of the year. Well, they've done that, but by a massive margin. That's just incredible.
No.
Yeah, I couldn't agree, Darcy. It was phenomenal to see the results. I was calling another game, and to see it, the game was over at quarter time, basically. When you're 7 or 8 goals down and then 10 goals down at half time, and you question whether or not was that just Sturt having a really bad day and Glenelg having a good day, or a combination of both. But I overheard Marty Matner saying I called the Double Blues game on the weekend, and I overheard him saying that Glenelg lineup on the day that they beat them as comprehensive as they did was one of the best SANFL sites he's ever seen. When you've got guys like, Lockie Hosey, Matty Allen kicking 10 goals between them, Liam McBean's obviously a great player up forward, and they've got a really bit of a little gem in Cam McGree, former South Adelaide ruckman. Glenelg have probably struggled with ruck in the past, and he's a real quality player and was a difference for them in some tight games. So that one was a massive win out of the box for the Tigers.
Definitely, and it throws a little bit. It makes you think now, going come finals time, if these two teams play each other, will Sturt be a little hesitant, knowing the absolute whooping that Glenelg put them. Again, it's the home and away, and things do change. I know finals are completely different, but it's gonna sit in the back of your head a little bit. I know as a Swans fan, I hear it all the time when it came to the Swans this year's. Will the emotional scars be just as bad as say a visual scar? So exactly. So we jumped to
Spot
round
on,
10.
Donnie.
We jumped
Yeah.
to round 10, and as I said, off mic, I had to ask why this is an incomplete round yet, that there's still a couple of games, and that is because we have kind of a split round midweek bye kind of situation in the SANFL. So I tried to educate myself before we started so it didn't sound random, but I will be obvious, I'm still learning about kind of the inner workings of the competition. So we jump to the 3 games that have played so far in round 10. So we're not fully set on the ladder, but we will see. Start off a matchup between the teams that my two panelists support as the Central Districts Bulldogs get the win over the Eagles 43-26. The little grin by Phil makes me crack up a little bit. Norwood get their second win in a row by 7 over the Magpies 60-53, and Sturt back to their winning ways with a 16-point win over North. So a little bit of a grin, but I gotta go to it, gentlemen. 2 wins in a row for Norwood, and we'll kind of discuss it later. They're, even with the atrocious start that they had, they're still not out of the realm of making finals.
Yeah, and I think as Das alluded to before, they've obviously got a bit of momentum now, and it's pretty tight from third position down to the bottom of the ladder. It's pretty close. Percentage doesn't play a huge part, but Nord are a long way back from a percentage perspective. All they can keep doing is winning, guys, and that's what they have done. 2 on the trot. It is amazing what that confidence will do for them. And obviously, they played against Port Adelaide. I think from memory had 17 AFL listed players, so defeated a pretty good opposition. And the teams that they're playing in the coming weeks will probably be looking over their shoulder now. And yeah, as I said, amazing to get that monkey off the back. First time, I think, since 1910 that Norwood have started the year the way that they did. And they would have to break, I think, West Adelaide in 2016 were the worst side coming off a premiership to lose as many as they did. So a few records to be broken, but the season not done for the Redlegs yet.
No, exactly right. They're only 2 games, technically 2 games out of the 5 only. That's how close this is at the moment, this competition, which is great. I think it's fantastic, the competition. So I think, I'm not sure, the Tigers game the other night, Phil, they had, how many, 8,000 there or something? Is the highest crowd they've had for many, many years?
Just under 7,000. Yeah, the SANFL were really promoting it. They wanted 10K at the bay, so 10,000 at the bay. And I must say, full credit to the SANFL from a marketing perspective.
They did get 10,000, did they?
That was what they were aiming for. That was their marketing promotion, and they got 7,800. So,
yeah, that's for SANFL footy. That was just an amazing. Yeah, that's just amazing outstanding. It just shows how SANFL is growing again.
And I remember seeing a media release earlier in the week, guys, that the crowd figures for the same time to this time last year are 25% up. So there's great attendance going. It speaks a little bit about the evenness of the competition, and it's good to see some fans getting back to SANFL footy.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I really love it. I kept seeing all those 10,000, 10K at the bay, and I thought that's a really cool thing to do to trying to get a lot of people. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Like I said, if I had a teleportation device, I would have went. It would have been absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, science hasn't gotten there yet. So we jump again. The men's, and unfortunately, we have 2 more games still left in round 10. We'll kind of discuss that a little bit later in the podcast, but we'll go to it. We will let Phil have his moment. We will talk about the women's final. We will go over each of the games, how they went, break them down just a little bit. So we'll start off at the semifinals where we left off coming into it. Unfortunately, the road for Centrals wasn't exactly smooth as the first game of the finals. They fall to South 28-17, and Norwood knock off Sturt 27-21. Both really good games, I must say. Unfortunately, Central's run late didn't really happen as previous games. South, that defensive, really good structural footy was just a little bit too much for them in the semifinals. And I have to say, Norwood was a fantastic game. Sturt kind of ruining a little bit the lack of kicking goals with 2-9 on the scoreboard. So there is a little part of me that goes, Norwood had to feel a little bit lucky, because if Sturt was kicking straight, they might have found themselves out a round earlier than they did.
Yeah, I thought Sturt were probably going to be the side to get up in this one, because I know looking at form line, Norwood were a little bit up and down, and we know that they had a great run after a pretty poor start. And having seen the Double Blues a couple of weeks prior, I thought they were probably going to win that one. But I think what we saw with the first game as well, Das and Donnie, was the Dogs perhaps just a little bit overawed by their first finals appearance. South played Noarlunga really, really well. The ground was wet, boggy, and heavy, and that helps that defensive dower type style that the Panthers play. Central like it dry, they like it out in the open, they like to use their run and carry, and we saw that in the grand final, which we'll touch on soon. But yeah, I think both results were probably the right ones in the end, and a good experience for the Dogs to get under their belt with that first finals campaign.
You know, I sort of went, everything was aligning for me because I actually backed Norwood to win the grand final. They finished off the season well. Norwood won this game against Sturt, and then obviously the Bulldogs lost to South. It's okay, we'll knock off Centrals next week, and then we'll play South in the grand final. But it didn't quite align that way. So, but well done. I think Norwood did get into the prelim, which is great, and well done to the Bulldogs for losing that game and going on to win the grand final.
Yeah, definitely.
Which we'll talk about in a minute, of course.
Yeah, we'll jump to the preliminary final, and I will say this: Centrals was just so good in this semifinal over Norwood. I have never seen Norwood just absolutely get run over as much as they did in this particular game, a 62-22 game, and as I hate saying it, Norwood saved their absolute worst possible performance, unfortunately, for this semifinal, which kind of dampened it a little bit because I honestly thought this was going to be an absolutely magnificent game. I was going into it going, this is going to be a fun watch because you've got two teams that can both get after it when they want to, can score in buckets when they want to, and it just never really materialized. Central's got going. Norwood kind of was on the back foot a lot in this game again. You gotta feel horrible a little bit because as I know, Phil, you were on the call with Woodville West Torrance coach Narelle Smith, and I know halfway through that call you guys had speculated whether Allie Farrell was going to retire, and I went into that game knowing, and I couldn't say anything because I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag. She had let me know earlier in the week after some discussions back and forth, but I have to say, I will use this time to say this: what a magnificent way for her career to end, to get the final goal. I know it didn't make any connection to the final, but the way you and Narelle kind of gave her that swan song send off, not only on the broadcast, but then for her to get that kick for the goal at the end, and then for her to be cheered off and to get the guard of honor by both teams, I thought was absolutely magnificent. It's going to be sad not seeing her play any more footy. I know she's had a legendary career in the SANFL, so many 50 games, absolutely fantastic. I wanted to take the time to do that. It's disappointing that it's the way it ended, but at least there were some positives. Like I said, she had to kick the goal, and I think she played a relatively good game in a game that honestly it was just not Norwood's day. So, Darcy, your thoughts on the preliminary final?
I had all hopes for Norwood, only because I backed them to win, but gee whiz, and good on Centrals. They just come out after that loss the week before and just come out firing. They were on a mission that day. I could see it right from the start. Absolutely.
Yeah, the word insatiable comes to mind. That is as good as a SANFL W performance I've seen from a team. Yeah. You literally could have put all played well. I know that's a bit of an adage that we use in Aussie rules terms, where
you're right.
Every player was played their part. And just reliving the Ali Farrell moment, Donnie kicking that winning goal, it gave me pins and needles and shivers down my spine. Not because it's freezing cold here in Adelaide, but they're the kind of moments that I live for as a commentator. And reminiscing back to it, it was such a thrilling moment, a pleasure and honour for me to call it, and sad that it was the way that Ellie would finish her career. Wonderful respect. We see it at any level now. I love that we see both sides give that guard of honour. I think it was a great touch of respect from Central to do so, and great to see her family, her husband out there as well. And some tears were flowing, but there were tears of joy, celebrating a wonderful career. But yeah, take nothing away from the Dogs. They really showed that they're going to be up and about, and that was a win for the ages for Central Districts and Ben Hunt.
Definitely, for sure. Then we flip to the grand final, and that great performance continues. And I have to say this, I was absolutely ecstatic about this game. I knew it was a late start. It started 11:45 p.m. my time, but I had my energy drink. I was ready to go, and I was not disappointed. This was a magnificent game of football. I absolutely love it. But unfortunately, we must discuss it really quickly. I don't want to give it a lot of grievance, but I was surprised at the vitriol online about the final free kick that gave Central's the shot on goal to take the lead in basically kind of the last kick of the game. I know, Phil, I saw a couple of your social media posts. The free kick was there. I'm not going to deny that. I understand many people say it's soft, it's not called all the time. I understand. But at that moment, it's an obvious holding of the player. It's an obvious holding of the player. You can't not call it in that situation, because
No.
if you don't, it's going to be the opposite online, the vitriol that it wasn't called. So I don't want it to take away from the game. I think the game was absolutely magnificent. And honestly, I think this was the right result, because I think South played too safe in the second half. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, take my Centrals hat off, take my broadcasting hat off. I listened to talk back in Adelaide the following day, and Ken Cunningham, those in South Australia will know KG, a wonderful broadcaster, a wonderful former umpire. And there was some talk back about it. And his exact answer was, I'm paying that free kick, whether it's in the last minute of a grand final or round one. If the free kick's there, the free kick's there. The umpire shouldn't have to know when the moment is. He's there to do his job, and he paid the decision. And look, at the end of the day, it was costly to South Adelaide. You then question maybe the lack of execution or concentration from the South player to apply that tackle a little bit earlier. But it just shows, guys, games are such a split second. We're seeing that so pertinently with the suspensions in AFL at the moment with sling tackles, and it can be a matter of inches and millimeters. And the amazing thing for me was that Caitlin Teague, who kicked the winning goal, and of course conjecture about the 25-metre penalty, I still haven't been able to confirm what that 25-metre penalty was for. I can only assume it was back chat. But
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
Teague,
too.
unbelievably, Caitlin Teague said she had a nightmare the night before that her job was to kick the winning goal after the siren. Now, this was 30 seconds from the siren. The reason why, and if you watch it on replay, she gets the free kick. She starts her waltz in to do the kick on goal. Then the 25-metre penalty gets paid. But she doesn't wait for the girl on the mark to be set. She starts running in and kicks the goal from probably 10 metres further out than she needed to, because she didn't want to get in the mind that was the nightmare she had the day before. So a little side story from Caitlin, that was an amazing finish for her personally, but it goes down in history, one of the great games. And to be honest, guys, I was there just as a spectator, obviously watching it, supporting the Dogs with my family. South played the better footy for the majority of the game, but Donnie summed it up nicely. They just couldn't take their chances when they had the most of them. And I think they went too defensive too early. And full credit for Central for hanging in. The weight of numbers with inside 50s in that last quarter, it was heart-wrenching to watch, and just to see the girls finally get that winning score. And it was a day that I won't forget in a long time, and it was a great family day for me as well.
Darce?
Oh, that's it. I mean, I think you're right, Donnie, both Donnie and Phil, that you said that umpire decision. Well, if he didn't pay it, it would have been, they should have paid the holding man, and we lost, and we could have won, and that sort of stuff. But it was there, they paid it. But there was another talk back I was listening to, and another person said, look, it's based on 4 quarters of football. There could have been mistakes all during that game. That could have been a goal, not a goal. They dropped the mark, a minute at a time. But it just happened at that. Everything that happens that last minute is always what they talk about afterwards. But as you said, some of the chance they get, they missed it and they didn't win the grand final in the end. So, but well done to Centrals. I think they played it right to the end. And you're right. I think that, if that girl missed that kick from running, she could have had another 10 meters on it. But no, she didn't. She said, I can do this running, and bang, straight through the middle, and that was it. Well done.
Donnie, just one other thing I wanted to say, and I have to give absolute kudos to Rick Watts, the coach of South Adelaide. They're such a respected club in the SANFL, and there's a reason they've had sustained success. First with Chrissy Steen, now with Rick Watts, and obviously got through to the grand final. But full credit as well to their captain, Bree Cleggett. Her acceptance speech afterwards, or her thank you speech afterwards, just had so much respect and admiration. She said she, from afar, she was pleased for Central that they were able to, progress the way they had. And that speaks so wonderfully of the mindset of the leader that she is, based on the fact she just lost a grand final in heart-wrenching conditions. And to come out and speak like that, I thought it really spoke testament of the South Adelaide Football Club and Bree as a leader.
100% agree. I remember here, I watched that and I thought, that is class personified. That just shows you how good a leader she is. But let's flip it just a little bit. I got to ask you this, Phil, because I know as a Central's Nuffy, Shelby Smith's acceptance with that, she throwed a little bit of a crack at her father. So I have to please explain this to me. Do I kind of take the guess right? Her father never won a SANFL premiership?
Correct. So we played 100 games for the Bulldogs. He's the best and fairest, like Shelby. He was a club captain, like Shelby. And the comment was, I've got one up on you now, Dad, and that's being the premiership medal. And I had my son on my shoulders just off to the side of the huddle, and I was laughing so loud, I actually had to take him off my shoulders because I was worried I would have fallen him off. So it speaks testament to, I think, Shelby's personality. And we talk about the great leader of Bree Cleggett, but the Central Districts Football Club at the women's team would be nothing without Shelby Smith, and that was evidenced by her suspension for 3 weeks. For an act she'll admit was not the right thing to do. She paid her due course with the suspension of 3 weeks, but when they didn't have her in the side, they're a different team, and obviously they're a premiership team now with her as the best on ground player as well.
Definitely, for sure. And I best on ground was absolutely fantastic. She deserved it. She was everywhere. She was in and under a tough, hard game of footy. Absolutely love watching Shelby play. And I remember I've congratulated her a couple of times online. And I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that we can get a chance to sit down and talk with the Premiership captain very, very soon. I hope so. I will let her enjoy her celebrations a little bit before I try to bother her with a podcast. But I have to say, again, such a magnificent round of footy, a fitting end to this with a magnificent grand final. Gentlemen, thank you for doing that. And I remember tweeting out a little bit later, it was like, thank you to all the SANFL W fans that have interacted with me, especially you, Phil, because I thoroughly enjoyed my first full season of watching this competition. I cannot wait to watch it grow. I've been amazed with all of the great talent that I got to see this year, and sad to see some of the talent that I got to see this year retire as well. But we'll discuss that just the tiniest bit a little bit later. So we'll jump to the burning questions really quickly. We'll jump back to the men's really quickly. I'm fascinated for both of you to say this is the first one right off the bat. We'll go back to that 105-point smashing. Glenelg was the first team to knock off Sturt. Was this a show that the Tigers are actually the top team in the SANFL this year, or was it just a bad day for the Double Blues?
I went and watched Glenelg versus Eagles a few weeks ago. It was a Friday night under lights, and Glenelg are the team for me. They're sitting second behind Sturt, but what they did to Sturt, and then what I watched that night, every grab was taken. It was just hard at the ball, high marks, strength. It was poetry in motion just watching this side. Just they cleaned up Eagles. They were just a side to watch, and it seriously was. And I thought this side is going to beat Sturt at some stage, and they did by quite a margin as well. So they were just on fire. And that's the way they will be playing, I think, for the rest of the year. They'll be very hard to stop if they do. They lose another game. Here's my call. I think they will be very hard to lose another game this year. They've lost that first game, but I think gee whiz is going to be pretty hard to beat. I hope they don't do what happened the other year with the Eagles, where I think they lost one game for the whole year, including the finals. Then the Eagles come out and beat them in the grand final. So I just don't want that to happen again. I don't like seeing that in any team, even Eagles, wherever it may be. But I just think they were just a side to watch that night. I saw them just awesome.
Yeah, and I think it speaks wonders for obviously how good Glenelg are playing under their first year coach in Darren Reeves. I know Darren from his time at Central, and he lost the first game, but then he hasn't lost a game since. And I think it was a little bit of both, Donnie. I think Glenelg are the team to beat. They're a quality side. If Marty Matner comes out and says they're the best side he's seen in quite a while at SANFL level, you've got to take his word for it. But I reckon as much as Glenelg played really well that day, Sturt probably had their worst day in a long time. And I think they'll have that in the back of the mind the next time these two sides met. I called them on the weekend against North Adelaide, and we saw them turn their form around. They should have won by more. North were again disappointing. It was a really boggy, Unley oval that saw the game a little bit more even through the midfield. But I think Glenelg right now are the premiership favourites pretty easily.
Awesome. So we'll jump to it. We jump from the top of the ladder to the bottom. I want you guys to pull out your crystal balls really, really quickly. I know you don't have the turbines. Really quickly, even with Norwood's horrible start to their season, they've won 2 games in a row. Unfortunately, the bye hits at kind of the worst possible time. But can the legs still make finals, or is it just too big a gap? Phil, we'll start with you.
Just having a quick look now at their draw over the next 3 weeks, because I reckon as we get to the heart of winter, that's where the games are a little bit tougher. And I think they're going to struggle to make finals, to answer the question in a nutshell. They've got the Double Blues, they've got Glenelg, and they've got Eagles over the next 3 weeks. So you'd think they probably have to win 2 or 3 of those to really get themselves back up towards the top of the 5 ladder. And I can only really maybe see them beating Eagles. I don't think they'll beat Sturt. I don't think they'll beat Glenelg. So whilst I think, the reigning premiers will want to play some good footy in the back half of the year, I suspect they'll either just qualify and make up the numbers, or my gut feeling is they'll just miss out.
Darce?
Donnie, when you look at the premiership table as it stands now, who would have thought Eagles are 4 and 6 and sitting 5th? That's just extraordinary what this competition is like at the moment. So look, Nord are only 2 games out, but as Phil said, look, they're going to have to beat, the Glenelg, Centrals, Adelaide's, etc. Even maybe the Eagles they could do, but very tough then to get to 5 now because they had that poor start. But it's just such a close, like even South Adelaide, 1 game out of the 5, like they're sitting second bottom. This is just an extraordinary competition at the moment. But Nord, look, I hope they do keep winning. I don't want to see them, go from premierships to wooden spoon. I think that'd be a horrible thing to see from any club. But hopefully they just do win a couple more. But then I'm a bit of a South fan too, believe it or not. But it's such a close competition, this one, and that's great. But that's great for the competition as a whole. Getting the crowds there, it's building everything up. And I think people are getting very interested at the moment.
Definitely, for sure. So that'll do it for the men's questions. We'll go over to the women's, and I have to ask this. It's going to make Phil smile a little bit. So we'll start with Darcy to answer this question. Centrals win their first premiership in their first time making the finals. How good is this for the women's comp that you see a debutante team in the finals win a premiership?
Phil, I hope Phil, so we're going to answer this question because I reckon this is the greatest thing in women's footy that could happen this year. So coming in, winning a final, then winning a grand final. Now, obviously, Phil will know Elizabeth is out north of Adelaide, and for the north of Adelaide to win another premiership. I mean, the men Centrals during the 2000s were just a mean machine. They won, look, 8 grand finals out of 12 they played, or something ridiculous like that, which is great. And now if the women can come in and do something straight away and set the tone for the Elizabeth area of the north, I reckon it's fantastic for football, not only the north, but for the women's footy as well. It's just brilliant. And I reckon I can see women's footy growing so much now.
Yeah, and the starting point I wanted to make was forgot to mention it when we were talking about the grand final. The growth of women's football. The SANFL were expecting just over 2,000 people to the grand final. They got over 3,500.
Yeah.
They were so happy with the crowd. Talking to Ross from the SANFL on the day, he was just ecstatic. And it really speaks testament for when you've got a strong competition, you get family, you get supporters coming through. But it really gives pathways for young girls. And I think I've seen the SANFL season 1 right through to season 7. And we've had 5 different premiership teams in 7 seasons. So that really shows that it doesn't take long for these new sides to come in and settle, but we're seeing pathways from 10 years old, girls that are getting a footy in their hands when they're younger. Then we're not relying on sports converts, netballers and basketballers to come on board. We're seeing the quality of the competition rise a level. And I think what Centrals did really well, guys, is they covered their AFL girls that weren't going to be qualifying for finals. They had a bit more depth than they have in previous years. I know talking to Narelle Smith, she'll attest to this. When you're a new club, it takes a while to build the depth up in your squads because you've got to rely on having injuries and depth in the team. So Centrals did that well over the last 2 or 3 years. And a shout out to Sean Ribbons, who really started the whole coaching program at Central in the women's comp. And they wouldn't have been premiers if it wasn't for them. But Ben Hunt did a wonderful job. And I think it speaks testament for the strength of the SANFL W competition.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was, and so many young girls, and several young girls that I think are going to be fun to watch, and I think are going to only grow this competition for sure. So we jump from that to, I think this is going to primarily be for you, is that unfortunately we're seeing as some call the OGs of the competition, some of the original starters putting up the boots and retiring, and it's sad to see because you hate seeing a player retire, but you completely understand. Again, it's not a full-time competition. It is semi-pro. Many of these women, they have lives, they want to have families, they want to do that. So is there one that in the back of your head you're going, I'm gonna miss not being able to see play next season?
Without showing any bias towards you and your connection with Ali, mate, Ali Farrell, I think she's a wonderful leader. She's not only a great person. Got to meet her for the first time. We've spoken a few times on social media, but in that preliminary final, I made an effort to go up and see her. And I had a gut feeling as well, Donnie, that she was going to finish up. So I just said, I love commentating you. Keep up the good work. Kind of jokingly said, good luck today, but not too much luck being a doggies man. And she's one of those girls that is, she's a real trendsetter in terms of if we didn't have girls like her, Chelsea Packer from Glenelg, Caitlin Swanson also from Glenelg, Ellie Kellogg, who's retiring. The Glenelg side are going to be hit by some big key departures. We wouldn't have those pathways for the younger girls to come through. So the SANFL W will be poorer for those girls retiring. But I think what's going to be great is the education and I guess the schooling that they've shown to these younger girls. It's really going to prove a great pathway for future generations. Maya Rigder, another one I wanted to mention. We know that she's obviously had to retire early because of injury. She is only 24, but I think you'll be keen to get her on your show soon as well, Donnie. But yeah, look, 5 or 6 wonderful girls. We've seen this year more than ever girls reach the 50-game milestone. To me, in my opinion, 50 SANFL W games is probably the equivalent to 100 SANFL men's games. So to have 4 or 5 seasons in the competition, if not more, really says that these girls are a great testament to the competition.
Definitely, for sure.
I just hope that the women of this caliber don't go off in the sunset. They come back and do some sort of coaching role or mentoring role. I think that'd be very important because they've been such leaders and they've been such mentors to the junior players. We hope that they come back in some capacity just to keep this women's footy alive. If they keep just falling off the edge, it just may keep happening. But if they keep coming back and helping out, I reckon that'd be fantastic to see also.
Yeah, well,
I know Donnie Ali's in the state under-18s program, I think, or under-16. So it is a great pathway to have. And no doubt, the clubs that have these retiring girls, they're not silly. They're going to jump on them straight away and say, just come out to training, help us out, be involved. And some like Ali are going to have that official role as well.
We hope they do. Absolutely.
Yeah. In my communications with Ali, she is super, super excited to get into the coaching. And like I put in my tweet out to her, is like, I think she's going to have a chance to have a legendary coaching career because of her experience, because of what she knows. And she's already helping the younger. She assists with the under-18s. She's one of the coaches for the under-16s. And you can see that she's making an impact on it. I cannot wait. Maya Richter, I completely agree with you. It's sad to see such a young, talented captain go out. Sounds like she's going to go into the physio side of things, so she may not be a coach. Not everybody is coaching material, and I don't mean that as a shot at anybody. It is not an easy job, but to keep that talent and to keep that knowledge in the clubs and in the atmospheres of the SANFL W, I think will be fantastic. I really agree with you. I hope so. I don't want to lose that knowledge and that experience because it will only make this competition grow. And it took steps by leaps and bounds this year. So definitely so much fun. So we always have to end the episode with tipping. So I thought we're going to do it a little bit differently than normal, just because, again, we have this odd split round with the 10. So we're gonna finish with the last 2 games of round 10, and then we'll tip round 11, just because, I mean, we gotta have more than 2 games to tip. So we'll jump right into it, gentlemen. When we come back this weekend, we have Westies v Glenelg. I mean, everything that I keep hearing, Glenelg is the team to beat. So I think Glenelg is going to be my tip for the weekend. Again, I'm going to dive much more into the SANFL men's a lot. As we go on a little bit further the rest of the year, we will keep these shows going even without the women's, because I have to keep an eye on the SANFL. It has been so fantastic, and the men's competition looks like it could be just as cracking as the women's. So Darce, really quickly, Westies, Glenelg, who do you like?
I think if what Tiger did to Sturt last week, it was top. I think West Adelaide were a world of pain this weekend, so Glenelg by a long way.
Yeah, look, I think Glenelg will win. My gut feeling says 7 or 8 goals. I don't think we'll see 100-point drubbing. I think Glenelg are a very good side, but Westies are an improving side, and they caused a few upsets along the way. They were very good in their last couple of outings, and the Tigers should be too strong. Quick shout out to the SANFL. They're doing a wonderful thing this year to help with the advertiser sponsoring it. They call it the Super Match. So great family day out. There's a putt and you get a free haircut. There's great activities all round, and the SANFL really promote 1 game a week as the Super Match. And this game at Richmond at Hisense Stadium is that on the weekend, but I think the Tigers will be too strong.
All right. And then at Flinders University Stadium, as South host the Adelaide Crows reserves on this one. Who do you like, Phil?
I think the Crows, I think they're going to have probably 15 to 18 AFL listed players. They're up and about from an AFL perspective. They've had all these young signings come through, so they're going to be up and about. And the Panthers, a bit like South Adelaide, have been too up and down for mine this year, a bit like North Adelaide rather. Very up and down, and I think they'll be competitive. South have been hit by some injuries to some key players, some real key guys that are going to be struggling to cover in the depth. So Adelaide by probably 5 goals, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree with that. So Crows, I mean, they've got the highest percent in the comp, 60%. It's probably equal as well with Glenelg. So very high percent, and I think that when they do win over teams, they win quite comfortably. So when the South are sitting second bottom, I think again they're gonna win quite big actually. So the 5 or 7 goals.
That was It was interesting that this last round, both the AFL and the SANFL, both Crows teams had the bye this week, so they should be cherry ripe for this. I agree. I think Crows win that one. So we jumped around 11. Like I said, we can't just do one. We can't just do two games. So we jumped to round 11. So I know a few things may change a little bit. So Woodville West Torrens hosting South Adelaide at. I'm not even going to make an attempt at that oval for sure. So, so Darce, we'll start with you. Can your Eagles knock off South?
Oh, look, Donnie and Phil, we have to. This is a have to win. I'm obviously going to back him, taking my hat off here, but we have to win. We're equal on just scraping the 5 owner percentage. We lose this one, we could find ourselves sitting back to 8th spot. So, and it's just a good opportunity. Yes, South the second bottom, not the best at the moment, but I think this is the best chance to sort of get that one game clear in the 5. Maybe someone else might be equal as well, but just have to win this one to keep our finals hopes alive in this coming up in the second part of the season.
Last time these two sides met at the same venue, and I'll give it a crack, Donnie. Morn Team Kia Oval. So Morn Team and Kia are car dealers, and they've been great sponsors through Daniel Thomas of the SANFL, but of the Eagles as well. So Morn Team Kia Oval, the home of the Eagles. I think they'll win this one. The last time they played, though, I remember the game on telly. The ground was an absolute quagmire. There's not great drainage at Woodville, and if it was a wet, heavy game, from memory, the Eagles only just got over the line. So I think it'll be a tight one. South have still got to play the Crows, obviously, this coming weekend. I think the Panthers will lose that one, and then it'll be back-to-back losses for the Panthers, and the Eagles will stay in check with the 5.
Yeah, all right.
Unfortunately, the visitors don't actually have. We've got sheds at the moment because we're doing our club rooms up. We're doing a big, a major development on the club rooms, and so they're just changing sheds at the moment. It's not ideal preparation for the home side, the visitor side. Sorry.
Oh boy! So we jump out to Alberton.
Turn the hot showers off.
Yeah.
All right, we jump out to Alberton Oval as the Magpies host Westies out at Alberton Oval. It'll be fantastic one on this one. Phil, who do you like in this one?
You think Port Adelaide, as much as I think Westies have improved. Look, just lose my screen there. Sorry.
He disappeared.
As much as disappeared for a second. Just had an issue there. As much as West Adelaide have improved, I think Port Adelaide, they're going to be up and about with their AFL team flying. Of course, they're going to have maximum AFL players should they not get any injuries at the next level. So I would expect Port to win pretty comfortably in this one.
Yeah, I agree. At Alberton Oval, I think it's going to be pretty hard to beat out there. Westie is just struggling a bit, and Port are on the rise, and very hard to win out there at Alberton in front of a hostile crowd.
Definitely for sure. Port and Maggie's on this one. An interesting little test is Glenelg at Stratorama Stadium take on the Bulldogs. Darce, who do you like in this one?
This will be a crack of a game, I think. Yes, I'd still think Tigers are going to win comfortably, but Bulldogs, they're doing okay this year. They're sitting 4th, not way out of it, but I think they're going to give it everything down at the Tigerland. There's going to be a big crowd down there again, and I think it's great playing in front of big crowds, regardless if they're the opposition or your own crowd, because they do have a big following, Bulldogs, when they do play away. So still Tigers, but I think it's going to be a very good contest.
Yeah, I think Glenelg at home are going to be too strong. I'm going to be commentating this one with young Lockie Gould, a talented youngster coming through the ranks with the commentary team. And the Doggies only yesterday, I think, were dealt a bit of a blow at the tribunal. So 2 players have been suspended, key players, Ethan East, a good wingman that can kick some goals, and Billy McCormack, who's a big ruckman, who both boys suspended, so will miss this game. So there'll be big blows for the Bulldogs. I'm not sure they've got the like-for-like players in the reserves to cover them. So I think Darren Reeves, the coach of Glenelg, who spent a lot of time at Central, both at reserves and under-18s level, will have a nice little win against one of his former clubs.
Yep. All right. And I agree. I think Glenelg is just going to be a little too strong, especially with those outs there. So Prospect Oval as North hosts the Adelaide Crows reserves. So Phil, who do you like in this one?
Oh, look, this one's going to be a good game because North Adelaide, I reckon by the time this game comes around, their season's almost going to be on the line. They've really played some good footy at times and some terrible footy at times. And at the start of the year, I had them as premiership favourites based on the list quality that they had. I never really liked to tip the AFL guys as premiership favourites because there's so much unknown with injuries, with selection at that level. So I think North Adelaide have been mega disappointing, and I reckon Adelaide will touch them up in this one at the home of the Roosters.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think even though there's one game between them, which is quite funny, that 3rd versus 7th is one game, but I think Adelaide are just way too strong, much higher percentage, and I think they're going to do them pretty easy as well.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Got Adelaide in this one. And then an interesting one here, as you guys kind of said, this is kind of a make or break it, which is really interesting this early in the year. Can this make or break Norwood's season? Norwood v Sturt, Wigan Oval. Can the Leggies find a way to knock off Sturt, or Sturt just too strong? Darce?
I would love to say Nord here, guys. I seriously would. I think when you look at Sturt, you go back, they're only just won quite a number of games only by within the 2 goals, sometimes within a goal. And we're not talking big margins to be on top of the ladder. And Nord, when they were lost, they were only losing. They lost the first few by quite a margin. But they've improved and improved. And then, yes, they won the last 2 games. And it was the second bottom side. And I think the other one's Port Adelaide, which they're a reasonable side. I still think Sturdy going to win, but I'd love to see Nord just get within 1 or 2 goals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I concur. I think this will be a tight game. It's the battle of the eastern suburbs rivals. So maybe a latte on the end of it for them on the parade somewhere for the winners. But look, I think Nord, what we have seen from them, and there's no correlation here, guys. Jacob Kennelly, one of the co-captains of the Nord Football Club, he came into the side 2 weeks ago after a long-term injury. They're back winning. He's a bit of a spiritual leader. Him and Matty Nunn, co-captains. They're slowly welcoming some guys back from injury. Cam Ball is a big key defender. I reckon they've probably been leaking goals more so without him there. So by the time this game comes around in 2 weeks' time, don't be surprised to have 3 or 4 premiership players back in the Redlegs lineup, which will make this game even tighter. Toss of the coin for mine at the moment without knowing the teams and what happens in 2 weeks' time. Probably just going towards the Double Blues based on form, but I reckon that'll be a cracking game. And I reckon I'm not commentating on the Sunday, I'll be heading along as a neutral to watch that one.
That'll be fantastic. So, gentlemen, that is everything that I have for this round. Again, fantastic show. It's always great to be able to sit
I'll just
down
say
and
one
talk.
quick thing. Sorry, Donnie. Sorry to interrupt you there, but on 15th of July, which I'm hoping this is a game that's telecast, it's the 30-year reunion of Eagles, the Woody West Tigers Footy Club, winning their very first grand final as a merged entity. Not sure if you know the background, Donnie, that there was the West Torrens Footy Club and the Woodville Footy Club. West Torrens hadn't won a grand final since 1953. Woodville have never won one. They merged in 1990, and 3 years later they won their first grand final. So the 30-year reunion's on 15th of July versus Nord, with who they beat in the grand final in 93. So hopefully, we got to Phil commentating that game. That'd be even better. But it should be a good game for everyone to go out and watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a colleague of mine, Wayne Wiedemann, a cult hero at the Crows, was, of course, a
absolutely.
He often speaks fondly of that game and perhaps still a little bit holds a bit of ill towards the Jack Cody medalist voters, because I think Stephen Ziller, maybe from memory, got the medal, and Weed thinks it might have been his. But just wanted to say one thing as well, Donnie and Das mentioned earlier. I think you guys talked about Central's men's dominance. Das, you held a short 1 premiership. You said 8 out of 12. We won 9 out of 12. So just wanted to recorrect. And now with the 10th one of the women's, one other thing I wanted to say, you dogs.
Yeah. That was a dominant force. The 2 Gowan boys still give me nightmares. So
yes,
the twins, sorry.
Sorry, I have to say this. I was watching the post game coverage after the game, because I had to be able, and they were talking with Shelby on I think it was the Channel 7 broadcast. They kind of clicked into it, and I have to say it made me chuckle so much when the girls ran over and they kind of photobombed Shelby and that, screaming and yelling "you dogs" and everything like that. Like it just shows you the connection that the women had. It was fantastic. So it made me chuckle a little bit. It was definitely a great sight to see. And like I said, all the love to Shelby. I think she had an absolutely magnificent game. Talks so wonderfully. It just shows you the class of her and how she captains that Doggies team. But again, this has been fantastic. I absolutely love it. Like I said, I was telling Phil off mic, I said it was a little weird this week not having some of the women's games to watch. I'm trying to find some replacements again. Yes, I'm covering the VFL and the Waffle, but I've had this fun connection with the SANFL because I've had so many great communications with so many people like these 2 gentlemen here on the podcast, and I've really enjoyed how I've been embraced by many in the SANFL community, and truly appreciate that. So I had to say this on this episode. Thank you again to all the SANFL supporters, SANFL W supporters, because it has been magnificent finding this community and being able to chat with it, because at first I was only an AFL fan. I only knew the big business AFL, but finding this little niche connection in the SANFL and the SANFL W has been amazing, and I truly appreciate it. I mean, I have jerseys now, I have Guernseys now that I proudly hang on my back thing now of that. I know that one is coming in the mail, that I can see the little grin
Yes.
by Phil. It is in the mail on it. So I will definitely rock the Central District's Bulldogs at least one time over the next few weeks. But again, I just want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for hopping on the podcast again. Truly, truly appreciate it. That is going to do it for our episode again, ladies and
A
gentlemen.
big thank you to Donnie for promoting our game over there. That's just awesome, mate. And thank you. It's amazing that the SANFL can get some promotion over in USA. That's amazing, mate. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah,
this
and I echo
episode.
Darcy's sentiments. Sorry, Donnie. I echo Darcy's sentiments because, mate, I must say, you're fast becoming a well-known supporter from the States here in SA. You're getting a good reputation. People are wanting to talk to you, mate. I know I've chatted to you off air about getting some more people for your show. And I think your reputation really does speak strength for your passion and the great coverage that you're giving. So all we can say is keep up the good work.
Well, I truly appreciate it. I wish I had the time to be able to do this weekly. I really, really do. But I want to be sure to at least get it once a month, just to be able to give that opportunity to get out there. Because I know I know that there's waffle podcasts. I know there's VFL podcasts. There just really isn't a ton of sample stuff like that. I've been searching for it on podcast sites, and it's just not there. So when I hopped into this, I wasn't expecting for so many people to be happy for it. And it's been absolutely magnificent. I really, really enjoy it. So, and as I said, I'm working on some ones. I know that there's a few that I have in the fire that I'm working on that. And I truly, truly appreciate it. And before we go, for those that are watching this, my team, the Des Moines Roosters, have our regionals starting this weekend on Saturday. I know it'll be over the night for many in Australia, but keep an eye on the Rooster socials and my socials. Unfortunately, we'll have to see how things kind of go. I'm hoping I can still go. I've had a few issues personally that I'm not sure financially if I can afford to go. We'll have to see. But my Roosters take on their Central opponents, hopefully going for a Division II championship in the Central. So keep an eye on it. Yes, everybody that are listening that are North Adelaide supporters, yes, our club is a little bit connected to North Adelaide. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for the North Adelaide Roosters. So if you know anybody that's with the North Adelaide Roosters, would love to talk with that and to be able to share that story of how we're a little bit sister clubs. So when it comes to it, so no more talking from me. I will get off here. Thank you very much for listening. And we will be back again with more SANFL coverage very, very soon.